The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Let's move on to the main event, fellas. In the middleweight division for the undisputed middleweight title, we had Khamzat Chimaev defeating Dricus du Plessis by unanimous decision. Me and Steve had Chimaev and Admire had du Plessis. And immediately, Chimaev took DDP down and got him in the crucifix. Wasn't landing big shots, but got little pot shots and was just scoring points. And DDP looked like a fish out of water. And in the second round, more of the same. Chimaev controlled the whole round on the ground and made DDP look like a white belt. And that third round, more grappling dominance by Chimaev. Got him in that crucifix again. Landed bigger shots this time. And again, DDP didn't answer. I thought Chimaev may have gotten him out of there, but DDP survived. And deja vu in that fourth round, Chimaev owning the grappling department. And then in that fifth round, DDP made a late surge to get the finish and went for a few subs, got some strikes in, but it was a little bit too late. And dominant win by Chimaev, and he is now your new undisputed middleweight champion. What were your thoughts on this one, Admire?
Yeah, I mean, not a lot you can really say about this fight. I mean, it was just complete domination. I mean, shout out to DDP for making it last that long and not getting subbed. Longest fight of Chimaev's life. First time he's ever went 5 rounds. So held on that long. Dude is a beast, just straight up animal. I mean, there's a lot of things I'll say today about it. I mean, he's going to be probably the greatest fighter that we're going to see. I mean,
even better than Islam.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I have to think about that, but go on. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things I could say about him as a fighter. I mean, he's just that good. He's probably going to stay undefeated for a really long time. I mean, I'm going to make a big, bold statement. Everybody can disagree with me, but you're going to have to, prove me wrong. I mean, he's probably the best middleweight we've ever seen. I mean, you're going to have to tell me a middleweight that you think could beat him. And I can't. I sat there trying to think of a middleweight that could beat him, and I can't think of any in all of UFC history. He could beat any of them. And, we can circle around and keep talking about this fight, and come back to it. But I have one middleweight fighter that I think would have a chance. I'm not saying that I think could beat him, but I have one middleweight fighter that I think would have a small percentage of a chance.
Who's that?
Yoel Romero.
Why?
Just because he's explosive and, randomly just explodes with like the crazy knee, flying knee or something. That's the only chance somebody would have against Chimaev is, open up a round with a running, flying knee, just catching him, because you're not going to take him down. You're not going to submit him. You're not going to get him in a weird position. Like, you're going to have to catch him completely off guard opening a round. You're not going to control that guy. You're not going to find a wrestler that's going to out-wrestle him. You're not going to find somebody that can control him against the cage. So, I mean, I think Yoel Romero, would be the only person with a very small percentage of a chance to catch him off guard with his unorthodox, crazy moves.
I mean, for some reason, Yoel Romero didn't use his wrestling the last 8 years of his career. So he definitely have to, it'd be defensive wrestling, but he'd have to find a way to stay off the ground. But
right. I mean, I'm not even saying like Romero's wrestling could match Chimaev's wrestling. I'm just saying, like, think about when Romero did that knee to Weidman. Like, it would have to be something like that. It would have to be just a random move that just would catch him off guard. Just something nuts. Like, early in, I say early in Romero's career, which was still like in his early 40s, like when he used to just tumble and roll with guys and uses wrestling. That version of Romero is the one that would have a small chance. The Romero now, not really, but like the Romero that would actually wrestle and grapple and roll and toss and all that shit, that's the version. Anybody else, there's no other middleweight that I think can do anything. Like, even Bo Nickel, posted something about, I need to, get back to training or something. Like Bo Nickel couldn't even mess with Chimaev's wrestling right now. Chael Sonnen could not wrestle, in Chael Sonnen's prime, could not mess with Chimaev. John Jones, maybe with his size, could wrestle Chimaev, just because he would have that size advantage. But I can't think of any other wrestler the UFC has ever that could wrestle with this dude and grapple with him. I said, I can't think of a middleweight that could, go up against Chimaev. So we always talk about Anderson Silva being like one of the best fighters ever overall. And, he happened to be a middleweight. Think about what would happen if you took a prime Anderson Silva against Chimaev. Chimaev would grab a hold of him and put him on the ground. Chael Sonnen was able to get a hold of Anderson Silva and put him on the ground. Chimaev would have done the same thing, but like 10 times worse.
Yeah. Before I get into my thoughts, what are your thoughts on this one, Steve?
Yeah, just pure dominancy. Like you said, man, he didn't have an answer. It seems like when he did get up, which is his whole purpose, it was like for a few seconds he got swept right back down, and DDP's not a small middleweight, and it made me think of Chimaev's past fights to where it seemed like people had a chance. Burns early in his career, Kamaru Usman, although he seemed that he could control a veteran in the game like Kamaru, although Kamaru was trying to almost come back those last rounds, the third round. I'm trying to decide if Chimaev just decided to just have dominant fights on just wrestling and not even mess with the striking because it could possibly derail his plans, and it seems like that's what he chose to do, and especially lately. He'll play with you with the jab and get you to bite, and then he'll go straight for the takedown, single leg or I think mostly single legs he was trying to pull off, and likes that hunched over position and where he can hook his leg into the person's knee that's standing up while they're bent over. I seen that that was his favorite position to be in, to control him, so he can just dump him over and just put his chest on their back and make him carry his weight. Yeah, it seemed like, I guess DDP's been taken down before, but and I had heard conversations on YouTube. It's like, did you bring enough elite wrestlers in there to combat that? Because like y'all said, you look like a fish out of water. I mean, at least some of these fighters that he fought before knew how to get back on their feet very often to give themselves a chance to at least get some strikes in. It seems like he couldn't even do that. And like Admire said, I see Chimaev winning for a long time if he just sticks with the wrestling and not try to play around with the striking, which Chimaev had a KO highlight. But and that was a little bit early in his career, but I'm thinking he's sticking into his guns. And a lot of people call this a boring fight on his behalf. I call it getting the job done. And I would say it's okay to do it in this way because he showed how dominant. I mean, that's, to me as a UFC fan, that was just as much as entertaining to see somebody that's held on higher standards to get controlled like that. Whether it's somebody's not a UFC fighter fan and watching, like, man, they're just staying on the ground wrestling. Like, that was amazing that he was controlling DDP like that. And I think he got a bunch of credit for that and put fear in the fighters coming up.
So going back to what you were talking about, Admire, possibly, I mean, if you look at the history of middleweight, you may not be able to find anybody that could beat Chimaev, but I still wouldn't put him as the greatest yet, just because Anderson Silva did it over a long period of time. But if I were to put them head to head, of course, I'd probably pick Chimaev. But also, do you think that I've never been a big fan, not a big fan, but I've never been on the DDP hype train. Don't you think it might be a little bit of a case of DDP just being not that good in the grappling department? Because like Steve talked about earlier, we saw Usman going there and Usman made Chimaev look kind of human.
Yeah, but wasn't that kind of a short notice fight? Or what? There was something different about that fight. I think it was short notice.
Yeah, but Usman is not even a middleweight. He's a welterweight.
Yeah, but I mean, I think Chimaev does a lot of playing around. I think, DDP, DDP's a well-rounded fighter. I mean, he's beat the who's who. He has a lot of submissions on his resume. I mean, he's got 11 submission wins. That's, he has 9 knockout wins, 11 submission wins. So it's not like he's not a submission fighter. Most of his wins comes that way. So DDP is a very well-rounded fighter. And like Steve said, I 100% agree. A lot of people were saying, oh, that was a boring fight. No, that was a great fight. Just seeing somebody that is a great fighter get dominated like that and controlled. And I think that's what Chimaev did on purpose, was just saying, look what I did. I just controlled your champion for 5 rounds straight and didn't let him move. Had him crucifixed for 15 minutes of that fight? Like, that is insane, man. But I think that, to what you were asking with Usman, I think, Usman is a big welterweight. I think that Usman, former champion, and I think Chimaev does play around a lot. I think that he's very confident in what he does. But I don't think that Chimaev is going to be the type that ever gets caught. Like, we've seen Anderson Silva get caught playing around. I think that Chimaev is never going to put himself in a position to get caught like that. So I think if you ran it back and did Chimaev against Usman again, I think it would be a totally different game. I think he's going to continue to develop and be better and better and better. I wouldn't be surprised to continue to see his body change and grow, and maybe even someday see Chimaev maybe even balloon up and go up to, like a light heavyweight. He's 31 years old. He might continue to, go up a little bit.
I agree with you. Like, pound for pound, it'd be hard pressed to find anybody that could mess with Chimaev. But going up some higher weight classes, I don't know if he'd be able to do the same to some of these bigger boys. Not even going all the way up to heavyweight. Like, I don't know if he'd be able to do that to Magomed Ankalaev and some of those grapplers up at light heavyweight. I think it'd be a little bit more competitive. And then going up to heavyweight, you said John Jones, but even if like a Curtis Blades, he wouldn't be able to do that to him, even if he would have tried to go up to heavyweight like a Curtis, or even like a Jalton Almeida. But yeah, but with that being said, like, looking at just that middleweight, like, I don't see anybody who they would put in there with him it would be competitive. Who do you even see him going up against that middleweight?
Well, that's what's messed up, is like a lot of the middleweights like were tweeting and commenting the other night, like, oh, I got to get back to the drawing board and like retrain on the ground, because every one of them is going to get just dominated, and they're openly admitting it. The UFC's got to be careful with what they do now, because, a lot of people are going to want to see him, as the main card if he's just going to lay on people for 5 minutes. Me, I do want to see that, but a lot of people don't want to see that. Do they want to put, Drive at the forefront of their cards if he's just going to do that to their people? If I was a middleweight fighter, I would be looking, how can I lose weight or how can I gain weight? Because, how do you think it's going to go if Izzy goes against him? Izzy against Chimaev, what happens?
He's going to get taken down.
Yeah. So, Izzy needs to rethink what's he going to do right now. Strickland, what happens to Strickland if he goes against Chimaev? He's going to get the brakes beat off of him. He needs to rethink what he's doing. DDP's coach already came out and said, we don't want a rematch right now because of what just happened. So your whole middleweight stack of guys don't want to face your champion. That's a really weird position to be in. Usually everybody's lining up. The only person that I did see say that they do want to face him is Anthony Hernandez. Anthony Hernandez came out and said, I can get up from this guy. He can't hold me down. I got the stamina. I got the strength. I got the ground skills. That I don't know about. I mean, of course, you want to think you have that confidence, but I mean, I don't know, man.
I think if the UFC goes into thinking that he's just gonna go in and just like I said, he has the highest level of grappling, of course, but he's got stand-up skills too. He knocked out Mershard by KO, and Mershard was just early in that card, and he TKO'd McKee. So it's not like that's just he doesn't have other tools in his toolbox. So I think if like some of the casuals think he's just gonna go there and just do that, I think they're mistaken as far as that goes. But I just like you said, it seems like what was it? Hernandez is the only one that wants to go in there right away. There's a lot of stand-up guys in the middleweight where they would just get dragged to the deep end. I don't want to see Strickland in there. But what about DDP? Where does DDP go from here, Amar?
I mean, DDP really probably shouldn't fight anybody. I mean, he was just the champion. He's fought most of the guys towards the top. He was the champion for a reason. He should probably just focus on that ground game and just, work it and, try to get that rematch, but not right away. Figure out why couldn't he get up, work on that, bring in somebody, from overseas that has that type of ground game that can work with him and maybe try that. It's going to be really hard to get to that level, but you got to try something. Your only other option is to jump weight classes, if you want to be champion, but that's easier said than done.
Who do you think should be next for DDP, or what steps should he take next after this loss, Steve?
It's really hard to say because DDP kind of went through the middleweight before he ran into Chimaev, and so I would say sit back, and I think, of course, he's going to have to get a warm-up fight before going back in there for the championship. But I say he can't go nowhere, especially not a rematch, especially that dominant. And I would say work on his game. I think he keeps his camp in South Africa, but, South Africa doesn't have a strong presence of wrestling probably. And that's probably where he struggled. Who knows if he even flew anybody down there to even get that. So I would say he has to do either some searching for people to work with to come down there, or he'll have to switch camps or share camps.
So Imavov, I'm sure Imavov is ranked number 1, so I'm sure he's going to hold off to try to get the next shot against Chimaev, but we hadn't seen DDP versus Reina de Ritter. Wouldn't that be a good fight, Amar?
Yeah, I mean, that would be a good one. Especially do that and give it a little bit of time to see how things shake out. I mean, everybody's, if I was any middleweight right now, I would be trying to get a fight booked as soon as possible. That way you can kind of let things shake out and hope in the meantime that, Chimaev gets a fight and hopefully loses. You know what I mean? Just, keep yourself busy, hoping that he gets busy and just let things shake out, because that's really your only chance.
I think Brawlhalla might be a good fight.
Yeah, that might be a good fight for him. I don't know. Like after you get past Imavov, a lot of those guys are fighting each other, and you gotta start getting like Cabral and Reina de Ritter. Reina de Ritter just came off that win on that fight night, so yeah, we'll see. It's gonna be interesting, but I don't see Chimaev losing this belt anytime soon. And you talked about him possibly going up. Don't you think that this era of these super fights, quote unquote, is getting a little played out, Amar?
I mean, everybody wants to do the super fights and think that's the quickest way to get paid and all that. But I wasn't even talking about it super fight wise. I just think that, he's 31. I think that with his size, I think he's 6'2" or 6'3". I think that he has a little bit more time, kind of like John Jones. Once he gets towards the middle 30s, I think that he can put on a little bit more weight, do it the right way. I think that he would be a good size for light heavyweight, especially if he say he fights once or twice a year for the next 3-4 years, he could clean out the middleweight division and then go up to light heavyweight and do, a super fight at that point up there at light heavyweight and, do it the right way.
Yeah, we'll see. He's still young, so he's got a good ways to go. Hopefully we'll see a few title defenses before he thinks about going up. Thank you for checking out this Haymaker Combat Sports segment. This full episode could be found on the Haymaker Combat Sports YouTube page and in audio form on all major podcast platforms. Until next time, peace.